So at Rio Nutrition, we're always on a quest to help ranchers look at ways to increase profitability. The single most impactful factor of ranch profitability is carrying capacity. So with that goes the whole topic of under-optimized available capacity. Today we've got Tom with us. He's our financial controller. So Tom comes from a background of process improvement and looking at ways to drive profitability into a multitude of different types of industries. Tom, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about that.
A little bit off script, but yeah, I'm Tom Klebeck, and I do have 35 years of accounting and finance experience, and for the last 15 years have been engaged in business performance improvement around the world. Worked on 5 continents and have seen a tremendous number of industries, mostly in mining and manufacturing. But carrying capacity and the utilization of capacity is near and dear to my heart.
So I realize you've worked in a lot of different industries. Now let's bring this to ranching. If we have this discussion about under-optimized available capacity, it may sound like sort of your accounting jargon. Let's bring that down to the grassroots level in ranching.
Yeah, and optimized is good, but utilization of capacity is what we want to talk about. And so what happens is in any business you have a cost structure, all of the cost of that business, and some of those costs are fixed costs and some of those costs are variable cost. And the way most businesses look at their variable cost and the revenue that they earn on the next incremental unit of production, that revenue of the next incremental unit of production minus the variable cost of that unit of production is incremental profit, and what they might refer to as contribution margin. Contribution margin is available to cover fixed costs. Now in ranching, the cost structure is almost predominantly fixed. There is very little incremental cost of the next calf produced. So you're paying all of the costs for the land, for the ranch, for the equipment, for labor, and the mother cows, and keeping those cows healthy through the course of the year. And then whatever is produced, and you have the incremental cost of those calves. So the more calves that can be produced, which produces more revenue, is how you utilize your capacity to cover those fixed costs.
That's good. So let's take it a step further and talk about how increasing conception rates on any given herd can optimize the output of that ranch on the same land base.
Sure, and so if you think of just to use round numbers, if you think of a ranch that has 1,000 mother cows and they have an 85% conception rate, then they produce 850 calves. Well, if we can then increase that conception rate to 92%, then they'll produce 70 more calves, and all of that incremental revenue is available with very little incremental cost associated with keeping those calves healthy and ready for sale. And so all of that incremental profit, which is contribution margin, is available to cover the fixed cost of the business. And so by expanding that production of the mother cows and the output that they provide by 70, what you're doing is you're better utilizing the capacity of that ranch.
That makes sense. There's a lot of frustration in the industry because margins are pretty slim. There's a lot of pressure on ranching operations financially. But when you start looking at, you've got your fixed costs, you've got your biggest asset, that's your land base, whether it's something you own or whether it's something you lease, and then you've got your cow herd. And the question is, what do we need to do to improve or to increase the output? So another way of looking at this, Tom, we talk about the carrying capacity of the land. And with Riomax, with our digestion focus, we're feeding the bugs, feeding the microbes in that cow so she better utilizes every mouthful. What we see there is a decrease in forage consumption because we are meeting that cow's needs with less inputs because we greater efficiency, we're squeezing more out of it. Let's talk about that in terms of this topic.
Sure. As we travel around the world engaged in business performance improvement, one of the things we would always ask a factory is what is their capacity? And there was always a perception or a perceived capacity of what that plant could produce. But by changing the process flow and changing the way that work is scheduled and executed, what we found is that we could raise the capacity. And what Riomax does for the rancher is it may take that rancher that thinks he can only have 1,000 mother cows on his ranch to maybe 1,100 because of the digestive improvement and the things that you just described. And so redefining capacity provides that compound impact that goes with the increased conception rates.
So the numbers you used, if you took it from 1,000 cows to 1,100 cows, and then you take your fixed costs and you're dividing them, this is my simple cowboy math, you're dividing them out by 1,100 rather than 1,000. So it brings your annual cost per cow down immediately.
Yeah, you have an offsetting balance to that, obviously, if you have an extra 100 mother cows to take care of, but still the math is compelling. There's compelling economics associated with expanding your capacity, and that's related to the utilization of the Rio product.
So taking it to the third step, I guess, is expressing the genetic potential. So every rancher is spending money on genetics, whether it's females, whether it's bulls, whether it's semen, and when you look at this topic we're discussing, the question is, are we optimizing that genetic potential? You know, in terms of animal performance, health, immune status, weight gain, fetal imprinting. Optimizing your genetic dollar comes right back to, this is our factory, if you like, and how can we create a greater output, whether it's in pounds of beef produced.
Yeah, and I've performed some of that analysis to show the pro forma impacts of, pro forma means as if, to forecast the impacts of all of these factors as to how the rancher economics can change, how the rancher can become more profitable, which is where we started. So when you say I can now increase the capacity and go maybe from 1,000 to 1,100 mother cows, when I can increase my conception rates from 85% to 92%, then that's more calves produced. But what you're describing is that the calves are actually healthier and they weigh more. And so there's not a linear relationship to the price per pound you may receive at market, directly related to the maybe it's a 10-15% increase in weight, but combined with the increased health, they are more valuable.
Exactly. And I'm glad you touched on that. Your weight gain on those calves is another thing that we impact. We see 10 to 40 pounds increase typically across US and Canada. 10 to 40 pounds increase in those weaning weights. Again, you're getting more output off the same land base.
And at the same time, you can actually reduce your health costs related to getting those calves to market and keeping the mother cows healthy. So your actual cost within that kind of fixed cost structure we described of veterinary or health cost goes down, even though your production and your inventory's gone up.
Well, to the listeners, I hope you found this meaningful. As I said at the beginning, we are on a quest to help drive profits back to the ranching industry and look at thinking outside of the box, looking at tangible ways to drive that profitability back. And we always say the rancher is really a steward of the land. And some people think of that in terms of sustainability. And I would say we've got to be profitable before we can be sustainable.
The only thing I'd say in addition to that, the stewards of the land, is that it's fascinating to see that so many of these ranches are fourth and fifth generation ranchers. And to these people that are fifth generation ranchers, they want to be a good steward of the business they've been, inherited, but more importantly, they want to do better. Everyone wants to do better. And so us providing them an opportunity to do things that 3 generations ago wasn't available is a way that they can do better and be better shepherds of that asset.
Yeah, that's great. So in this case, we've got shepherds of the asset, stewards of the land, and we're talking cattle, we're talking sheep, we're talking the ranching business. And coming back to one of Tom's one-liners is, looking at underutilized available capacity, we may not see it, it may not be obvious to us, but with this methodology that Tom's bringing to the table is when you slice and dice it and you're on a hunt, you might say, for underutilized available capacity. And we've pointed out 3 things in this little chat: conception rates, the carrying capacity of the land, and then you're optimizing your genetic potential. I'm sure there's more the more you dig into it. But I think it brings fresh hope, Tom, to the ranching industry, that there are tangible ways to drive profitability.
I love profit improvement, and I think it's out there for you guys.
Well, thanks to the listeners. Thanks for joining us, Tom.